Hey everybody, Ben here from the Bonehead podcast and welcome to Print to Pitch. This is our show where we have a look at all things 3D printed for Blood Bowl. We're looking at teams, we're looking at big guys, we're looking at things that are not meant for Blood Bowl but that you can definitely use for Blood Bowl. And we're going to be looking at Patreons, individual teams, and sometimes a bit of both. So today we're going to be looking at our second Torchlight team. Now we had a look at the Torchlight Dwarf team a few weeks ago, and this month on their Patreon and their My Mini Factory Tribes, which is basically Patreon for 3D printed stuff, they've released a Khemri team. Now they've done a really good job of showing pictures of these as they've been working on them, and that's something I really like about Torchlight. They show a lot of their work in progress and actually tried their best to get feedback from people, which is actually really cool. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at the STLs, we're going to have a look at the pre-supports, and then most importantly we're going to have a look at the 3D printed models. Okay, so we'll have a look at what comes with the team first of all. So I've signed up to their Tribes, which is essentially Patreon for STLs. It's not very much a month, maybe $10 or something. That's what it normally is, and you get a whole team every month. So this team is meant to be a Tomb Kings team and has got everything you need to build a Tomb Kings team. We've got 4 Tomb Guardians, those are the big strength 5 dudes. You get a pair of throwers and a pair of blitzers, which are these ones here. And when we look at the 3D sculpts, when we look at the prints, you can see these guys actually have muscle mass to them. And then you've got a bunch of line skeletons here that are just old rusty skeletons, and it works brilliantly. So it could work actually, go into the effort of doing the test prints and putting it on there. So yes, how many have we got in this? I think it is just the 5 skeletons, the 2 blitzers, the 2 throwers, and the 4 mummies. And what is that altogether? 12 dudes, I think. There's actually 1, 2, 3, 4 skeletons, 2 throwers, 4 mummies, and 2 blitzers in the pack. And they all come pre-supported and individually pre-supported as well. So let's have a look at some of the STLs. So this is designed to be a Khemri team, so the best place to start with the Blitzras. So we've got 2 blitzers for this team here. I've got both the STLs here, and you can see the level of sculpting. So the Torchlight Dwarf team had a bit of a cartoony aspect to it. It was a little bit exaggerated, which meant it painted up really beautifully. I've not had time to paint any of these ones here, but you can see that same level of sculpting has carried over. So we've got the heavy kind of Egyptian theme here, ancient Egyptian theme, and there's plenty of detail on the skulls. And one thing I will say is they've done a really good job kind of sculpting the skulls to have expressions. Now, the Vortice Tomb Kings Kickstarter did this, and these are very similar in style but less cartoony, and I really like it. So you can see we've got the scarab detail, we've got some bits of cloth, you've got the kind of skull helmet motif, and we've got the cool cobra effect on the top there. It's very ancient Egyptian style. Now the cool thing is about the Torchlight stuff, you do have battle damage on here as well. So you can see we've got little bits of like chips out of the armor here, and you've got like a scratch over the top of the armor too. Now those things are excellent when it comes to painting the models. It's the kind of thing that comes up really well with a nice wash or a nice dry brush, and that's one of the really great things about some of these 3D printed models, and especially this one here, is those strongly presented details mean that they almost paint themselves. I mean, look at the fabric here. So the fabric there, not overly complicated, but actually it's done really well. It's done really flowing, and you just know that if you just chuck on some Agrax or do a bit of dry brushing, that detail and that cloth effect is going to come out really nicely. But we got to face into it. The reason you play Tomb Kings is because of the Tomb Guardians. So these guys are strength 5 cheap mummies, no mighty blow, but they're movement 4, strength 5, and they are there, and you get 4 of them on a Tomb King team. And let's have a look at them here. So they've gone, this is where that cartoony style comes through again. So I mean, these are the mummies of the team. They're essentially mummies. Tomb Guardians are essentially mummies, and you know what, you can see that exaggerated strength. You've got the muscles here. This is very similar to the R&E Studio Undead stuff, and I do like the style. It works well. You've got the kind of it's got an Iron Maiden kind of face, which I think works really well. Again, we've got the skull motif, you've got the great bits of sculpting, you've got nice bits of detail in there as well. The faces are kind of creepy, and I think it works. And we've got 4 different ones here, so you can see there's a copying of some single bits. So the mouthpiece is very similar. Actually, it doesn't hugely matter. The faces are basically the same, I think, for all of them. And you know what? It's fine because the poses are different. And the great thing here is that detail is nicely exaggerated, like we said before. So this is going to paint up with very little effort. And we'll have a look at the size. This is 100% scale. They have got plenty of pitch presence, and the fact that there's 4 different designs is really good. Now, they're a little bit similar in their stances, but the great thing here is if you want 2 of these guys, you can just chuck a little bit of a mirror on, and actually you've got a bunch of different mummies. I think it works really well. Okay, let's have a look at the throw-ras, the undead throwers here. Okay, so the posing of these is very similar. Kind of looks like they've been mirrored to start with, and then things have been layered on. That's not really different than what you'd see with a lot of other companies, and it works brilliantly. So the positioning of the thrower is really good, but you can see they've gone to the effort of giving them different robes, different tattered bits, different I don't know what they call it. I can't remember the thing, like the plate here, the belly plate that goes over the loincloth to kind of tie it all in. Works brilliantly. You got a nice bit of dynamism. You are going to know that these guys are throwers, and that is exactly what they're trying to achieve. And then we've got the line skeletons. So the pack comes with 4 line skeletons. Now these are a little bit taller than the rest of the team. So I'll chuck a thrower in here in a second, and we can kind of compare the sculpts. They are very skinny, but they are skeletons, and you've got a few different poses. I mean, all the level of detail is there. In fact, I think these guys might actually be more detailed. You know, we've got nicely sculpted helmet pieces, and in fact, if we have a look at this one here, you can see that the actual metal shows sign of, like, you've got the scratches in there like before, but actually the physical, like, dome of the helmet is battered and beaten, and it's got that kind of ancient metallic vibe to it. I think it works really, really well. Now, each of these has got like cool bits of cloth that's been wrecked and stuff like that, but they are quite skinny. Now, this is something that I worry about when I 3D print stuff. When I 3D print skeletons, if you look at this model here, now this is not a criticism of the models, but I mean, it's skeletons. You've got to try and find a way to make it work all right. That bit there that is on the leg, this bit here, is very thin. So we'll have a look at the pre-supported models in a minute. Actually, I didn't have any problems with it, which was great. But the design of them does make you think a bit, it makes it difficult to scale up and scale down. And that's not a bad thing, because I think the scale of these models is okay. But one of the beautiful things about 3D printing is you get the opportunity to kind of scale it up or scale it down depending on what you want your team to be. So if we've got the thrower here and we compare it to the skeleton, you can see the difference is that the thrower essentially has muscles, has that actual tone and definition, whereas these skeletons are just bone. It's an interesting one. You don't really notice until you put them together, because there's a slightly different kind of scale comparison there. Like the thrower just looks beefier, whereas the skeletons look like dried out husks of bone. Okay, so let's have a look at the pre-supported models. So I printed every one of these models and I only had one failure, which actually was this mummy here. It was a partial failure, so do check. I can't remember what it I can't remember what it was actually. It was one of the arms didn't form fully, and I had to go back and just adjust it with a bit of a support. I'll see if I can figure out and remember where it was. It's the only one that didn't work out. Basically, one of the arms was a bit squiffy. Or was it the leg? It might have been the leg, actually. Anyway, the thing with pre-supports is always worth giving them a double check. I printed out one of the Punga models as well, and one of the hands was just not supported, so I ended up with a massive flat edge. Not so great. Now, interestingly, these models are not pre-supported at a 45-degree angle. They're just pre-supported straight up, and you'll see when it comes to 3D printing them. I mean, I'm using my Elegoo Mars 2 Pro. Do you know what? You're supposed to print them at 45 degrees so you can get better detail. I haven't noticed anything bad at all. They came out really well, so they've done a very good job with the supporting. Just one bit of squiffy one on this guy here, so do give it a bit of a check over, and I will try and remember what the issue was there. But the supports came off great. The thing I was worried about was the skeleton here. So if you look at like the arms are very skinny, and when it comes to actually the supports, there's not a lot in it between the strength of these supports, between the thickness of these supports and the actual arm themselves. So just be really careful. If you do the hot water trick, be very careful when it comes to taking off the supports. But otherwise, they were good as gold, and Torchlight have listened to the community, and with their last team, they had all the blitzers just as one file, and it was really difficult. They've gone to the effort here of putting each model individually, which means you can ram them on the plate if you want to, or just pick and choose and put whatever you want on there. Really great progress from that. Really appreciated it. And I mean, this is a really well done bit of supporting. Okay, let's have a look at some of the 3D prints. So, like I said, I've done these on my Mars 2 Pro and used standard settings and standard resin, and you can see that the detail has come up lovely. Now, I think I mustn't have cleaned this properly because we've still got a bit of shine there. Doesn't matter, the model is fully cremated in the sun oven, as in I put it under the UV lamp until they were nice and done. But I mean, you can see the detail comes up really nice. I've paid no extra effort. This is one of the pre-supported models, so actually it's just come out exactly how you get the file. Can we see? So there's a few supports on there I didn't clean off because I just wanted to get it on. And actually, when it comes to the teeny tiny supports like this, they're not too difficult to do after you've made the models, so not too worried about that. So of my Tomb Guardians, 3 of them printed absolutely perfectly, and I'm pretty sure there wasn't even any damage when it came to the little bits of fabric, which is a bit of a stretch actually, because these will be supported and you have to be very careful because they are as thin as the supports in some ways. Now I tend to clean with IPA alcohol, then clean with alcohol again, and then chuck them in some hot water, and what that does is it kind of makes it soft so you can pull off all the supports. It's a really good way of doing it, but you have to be careful because there's quite a few thin bits here when it comes to the tassels, when it comes to the bits of fabric off the end, when it comes to these hooks. You've got to be pretty careful with them. So we've got some great little mummy models, and the blitzers came out really nice as well. Now, I haven't had a chance to paint these up, but they are going to paint up really easily and really well. So the blitzers, one of the models that actually has muscle mass and skin, and what's this? And kind of skin bits on it. I don't know whether that's damage or... not sure if that's damage or design, but there's a chunk out of one of the muscles there. They're quite muscular. And actually, when you look at the thrower as well, they've both got muscle mass to them. And you know what? It works fine. Torchlight have kind of got this semi-cartoony style to them. Things are exaggerated, and it means that they paint up really nicely with very minimal effort, and I am all about that. You guys know me, I will try and do things as easy and quickly as possible because life is too short to be spending all that time filing bits down unless you're really good at it, and I'm not. So those are the positionals, and we've got a couple of the skeletons. Now, one thing that struck me when I looked at the STLs was how thin and tall these skeletons are. And when you print them off, it is very much, you get the same feeling, and when the models come out, they are definitely nice and skinny. So if you look at this one here, this is what I do love about these, is you can see straight through the model basically because of the way it's designed, which is, I think, quite impressive. And that's probably one of the things you can do with 3D printing that you wouldn't be able to do with other kind of styles of model very easily. So you can see that, you can see this guy's spine, and you can see you've got bits of fabric all around it, and it works brilliantly. Now, when it comes to height, the linemen are quite tall, but the whole team is quite tall. I'm fine with that. Let's have a look at some based versions. So we've got my thrower here. I've just put on a Asgard Rising base just because I've printed out loads of them because they are very good. Works brilliantly. Okay, so we've got the thrower. Let's get a size comparison on the go with, that's right, the Nobility thrower. So you line them up. How do they look size-wise? There is a potential here that the Tomb King guy looks a little bit tall, but actually when he's on the pitch, it's not that difficult. It doesn't feel bad. In a perfect world, I'd probably scale this one down to 95%, maybe 90%. I think 90% would make it too slight, and I'd be worried about printing for some of the skeletons. But at 100% scale, they work absolutely fine with standard Blood Bowl models. This guy is definitely taller. He's got a tall cone head as well, but when you can see on the pitch, on a 32mm base, mass-wise, it's not worrying, and you don't get a strength 4 vibe from them. That's probably the biggest thing I'm looking for, is the look and the feel of the model. So if the thrower's there and actually he's next to a strength 3 player, They both look like throwers. Neither of them looks particularly different. Neither of them looks particularly stronger than the other one. But this guy definitely does, and that's exactly what we're going for with the Tomb Guardian. So this is 100% scale, and I really should have done a better job sticking him to the base, because he looks like he's kind of hovering a bit, but that is entirely on me. So this guy is head and shoulders above Fitzmagic. And when you look at the size of the shoulders, I mean, clearly this guy's skipping leg day, but I mean, he's probably been dead for thousands of years, so I'm fine with that too. Actually, height-wise looks great, mass-wise definitely great. So definitely bigger than a strength 3 player. And I've got an ogre here, because an ogre is strength 5. So this is the ogre from the Dungeon Bowl box set, who is now my strength 5 representative apparently on the show. And actually, this guy lines up. He's got smaller legs, but his shoulders and head are about the same size as the ogre, and this is being printed at 100% scale. Now, it fits on a 32mm base nicely. There is a part of me that wants to scale them up a bit, maybe just 105, 110% to give them that extra mass, but you guys know that I'm a bit crazy when it comes to my big guys. I like the big guys to look like really big guys. But when you line this guy up against a Games Workshop ogre, he's got the same kind of size, the same kind of height, the same kind of mass, and it really works. But the only thing to kind of look at is the skeletons. I like these. The sculpts are really good, but I think the proportions are a little bit off. So unless this was an elf skeleton, the skeleton might be a little bit too tall. Now, I wouldn't necessarily want to scale it down though, because of how thin some of these bones are. You might be able to get away with 90%, but the cool thing is that when they're based up, when they're on the pitch, it really doesn't matter. And actually, if they're just a bit taller than everybody else, it's not going to stick out massively. You will definitely notice that this guy is as tall without base as Fitzmagic is with a base, but I don't know, maybe Fitzmagic's just short, maybe this guy is just tall. Ultimately though, the models came out really nice, and with the exception of the one Tomb Guardian guy who didn't print out properly, everything else was absolutely perfect. And as you can see, there's plenty of detail, and these guys will really paint up very nicely with not a huge amount of effort. I just didn't quite have time. And there we go. So the Torchlight Tomb Riders team, it's like $10. You get a full-on Khemri team. It is a little bit stylized in some ways. You've got that cartoony vibe, but that's what Torchlight are doing. And actually, all it means is that they paint up really well. And I'm a bit gutted I didn't get time to paint one of these guys, because contrast paints, or the new speed paints from is it Army Painter, they're going to make super short work of this team. And if you're in the market for a Tomb King team, this is a pretty good way to go. I mean, it depends. If you like the cartoony mummies, then you're going to love this. If you don't like the cartoon mummies, then there are other teams out there for you. But actually, as far as 3D printable Tomb Kings teams go, I like this one, and I like it a lot. And I'm really happy that Torchlight are now in the market and are doing more teams. I can't remember what they're working on next, but I have no doubt that it'll be great fun. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for watching. Let me know what you guys think of this team. I think I'm a really big fan, and I like it. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for watching. We'll be back soon with more Blood Bowl content. Happy printing. Thanks very much for watching. We really appreciate your support. If you want to help support the channel even further, please like and subscribe, or come join us on our Patreon. We have early access to content. We get loads of feedback from you guys, and we try and do competitions as much as we can. Or you can get yourself some Bonehead podcast merch on our Spreadshirt site. So if you want to support a team, especially for the Bonehead Championship, you can pick up a shirt, a mug, things like that. It all helps support the channel, and we really appreciate it. Anyway, links below. Thank you very much. Happy blocking.